In this video, I'm going to review some of the basic things that we've done in RStudio so far. In particular, I'm going to review how to set your working directory in RStudio, how to load a few different file types, and how to perform basic descriptive statistics in the program. When you open RStudio, the first thing you want to do is set your working directory. The way to do that is to go up to the menu, and you'll see several options up here. Click on Session, scroll down to Set Working Directory, and then come over to Choose Directory. This will open up a window that you've probably seen as in other programs where you have a bunch of different file folders to choose from. Now, you have to know where your file is because it's not going to show up here. So navigate to whatever folder you've put your appropriate files. I'm in this folder, what I'm calling the Quant Day Data. Now you'll note that I don't see any files there, but I know that's where I put my files. So it's not going to be there, you just have to know you're in the right place. Once you're in the right folder, click Select Folder. And then if in the bottom right part of your screen you don't see anything appear, check the tabs down there and click on Files. It may be that you're on some other tab. When you click on Files, if you've set the right working directory, you should see a list of the files in that folder appear. Now, all different files will appear, even if they're ones that RStudio doesn't know how to open. So look for the ones that are appropriate for what you're working on. There are really two types of files that you may see that you'll want to open. One of those will be an RData file. If you click on that, it'll give you a dialog box asking if you want to place it in your environment. Say yes. And then you'll see in the top right corner, all of the objects associated with that file, whether they be one or many, will all appear up there. The other thing that you might want to open while you're here is if you have previously created a script file where you have been keeping code that you're using, you will see files that have the extension .r. In this case, I've given you a sample file that has the basic code that we've been working with and some of the examples we've been doing in class, so that if you want to go back and review, you can do so. That's available on Blackboard in the same area where the RData file and the codebook are also found. If you click on that script file link, it will open up your script file with everything that you've saved up here in the top left. Now, if you don't have a script file and you want to open one, there are a few different ways you can do that. You can click right here on this button at the top and click New RScript. You could also have gone to File and do New File and click RScript. Now you can see I'm just opening a bunch of RScript files. R is useful for a lot of different things, but for our purposes, we're going to start with looking at how we can use R to calculate basic descriptive or summary statistics. There are a few different kinds of summary statistics. Those include at base the range, or the minimum and the maximum values for a particular variable, and then measures of central tendency, which include mean, median, and mode, although we don't really use mode very much for our purposes. We also have, related to these measures of central tendency, measures of dispersion. And those measures of dispersion include standard deviation, which we use in relationship to the mean, and the quartiles, which we use in relationship to the median. So how do we do all of this in R? If you're looking at the script file that I left you on Blackboard, at the very top of that you will see some comments covering a few different lines of code and explaining what those lines of code do. And for everything we just talked about, we can do in really two commands. The summary command gives us everything except for standard deviation, and the SD command gives us the standard deviation. Now, below the comments, I have given you some examples of some of the script. So see, for example, these first two lines where we have summary of FM $ sales and summary of FM $ vendors, and a comment at the end that shows you this is going to give the summary stats for sales at the market and for vendors at the market, respectively. Note as well the syntax for how you put together code in R. When you're wanting to run a command on a particular variable, you list that variable in the parentheses of the command that you're using. And that variable has two parts to it. The first part is the name of the object in which the variable is to be found. In this case, we have a data object called FM, which contains data on a particular farmer's market for several years. And then there are many different variables in that data object, and we are going to look at the variables called sales and vendors. and we list those variable names after the $sign. So that $sign is what helps R to understand I'm looking for a variable by this name, the thing that comes after the $sign, in this object, the thing that comes before the $sign. Note also that R is case sensitive, so you must make sure that you do capital and lowercase letters exactly as they were coded into that data object. So if you've highlighted these lines, or if you only want to do one at a time, you can just have a cursor sitting on it. You hit Control and press the Enter button, and it will run in the console below. And so here's what that output looks like. You can see at the bottom here we have the summary statistics for sales and for vendors, and it gives us the minimum, the first quartile, the median, the mean, the third quartile, and the maximum. The only thing missing is the standard deviation. Now, standard deviation is kind of an interesting one, and I have a comment about this just above in the screen that you're looking at here. If you run standard deviation and you have any missing values in that particular vector, it's not going to run correctly. Now, if there aren't any missing values, then you're fine. You don't have to worry about it. But if there are, you're going to have to add a little bit of extra code. So I've shown this two different ways so you can kind of get a feel for what can happen. If you look at these next two lines, I have SD of the same two variables that we did a moment ago, sales and vendors, and we're going to run those in a moment here. But then you'll notice right below, I've also got similar lines for customers, and on the customer line, I've had to add this extra argument because there are missing values in customer. So here's what that looks like when we run it. We can run the first two for sales and vendors, and no problem, we get back numbers. And then if we run these two lines for customers, we get the summary statistics as before. But note now we have this extra piece on the right. It's telling us in summary, hey, you're missing 212 values in this variable. We have 212 NAs. And so, having already run that before, I knew that that meant that I needed to add this extra argument. So you can see in the SD command here, I've added, right after the variable name, comma, na.rm, which stands for na remove the NAs, equals true. It's a certain argument that R understands. I want you to do this thing. And so when you do that, it still gives you a value based only on the remaining, whatever that is, observations that are left. If we hadn't done that, it would just say NA because it's missing some data. So hopefully that makes a really good review of the things we've been covering so far. Note that though it is important to be able to do these technical pieces, what really matters is not just mastering the technical stuff, but figuring out what to do with the output that you get. And that's what we'll be working on in the weeks ahead.